Hi. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Talking Insights. I'm your host, Antonio. And today we're bringing you back to the Esomar Congress for a conversation that I had with Michael Nevski. He's an expert in consumer and workforce trends. And we explored during this conversation one of the biggest shifts reshaping how we work, the gig economy. He did a presentation during the event, The Rise of the Gig Economy, Empowering a New Generation of Workers. And during this talk, Michael highlights how flexible, digital-first work is changing opportunities, challenges, but also the expectations from both workers and businessmen. I invited Michael after a presentation to meet me at the podcast booth that we had on the exhibition floor. And we dived a little bit into what this gig economy means for the next generation of professionals and also a little bit about the future of the work itself. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, here's Michael. So I want to know more about the whole rise of the gig economy. I know that you've been on stage, but I want to just understand what it is. What's the whole...
Thank you. That's a great question. I think overall, it's a very important segment, demographic segment, when you pay attention, because for the last 5 to 10 years, more people are getting involved into the gig economy is general. But what is a gig economy? Gig economy is the type of engagement or occupation where people act independently, call it as independent workers or contractors, providing products and services, whether they're utilizing digital platforms like Uber or Fiverr or TaskRabbit, or actually providing products and services directly, maybe creating something and selling on Etsy, or teaching piano lessons or teaching French language, right? Skills. Those are kind of aspects. And people pretty much acting very independently. They're not really registered as small business. They're really providing those products or services, even DoorDash, delivering food to you. So again, as a workers, independent workers, that's what gig economy is. And gig economy can be defined as a full-time, part-time, but also side hustle. What it means, like you and me, we have a full-time jobs, but on a weekend, you're teaching how to play football. If I'm an inspired star and I want to play for a football club in the future, right? So that type of side hustle is important because that particular engagement is popular among all generations, but especially boomers, those who close to retirement or in retirement, because it allows them to do some engagement, because sometimes husband or wife retires and wife says, or both retired, especially wife says, you stay home all the time. You're ruining my zen.
Yeah.
Go and do something. So drive the Uber, do something what you know and how to do well. So you have some kind of occupation, some aspirational inspiration, right? So a hobby in life. And that's what drives boomers get involved more in side hustles while they're doing something else. Or maybe they're still working full time. And on the weekends, again, as a hobby, they're doing something, they can save those money. And for example, spending on travel because they want to see the new destinations, they want to experience life. And that's what gig economy is.
Is it different from freelancers and people that are freelancing?
Partially, there is overlap there, to your point, because freelancer could be gig worker or could be a small business person who registered their own LLC, sole proprietorship. Then we can consider that as a kind of a small business. But same time, what in the United States we call 1099 independent contractor without getting a business license. You can go and work and create a podcast for any particular company, but you getting paid as a gross. You're not considered an employee of that company, you're a contractor. You just pay, let's say, hourly rate, whatever you spend, and you pay your own taxes, you buy your own insurance, stuff like that. But same time, it gives you that flexibility because you can do one employer at a time. Let's say you're creating a podcast for the next 6 to 12 months, getting staged and up and running. And then you say, okay, thank you, company A. Now I got another contract going and I'm going to switch. I'm going to work full-time for the next 6 months for this company because they really love what I did for you guys. And now I'm going to do podcasts for this company. So, and there are plenty of those folks who being considered freelancers, but same time 1099. That means they still gig workers. So, and that's what I talk about early in my presentation.
So as I was saying before we started recording, I was telling like I'm come from Portugal. Now I'm in Amsterdam. In the past few years, we have been having this problem with a bunch of people that work in a company, but then they get a freelance status or a gig worker status. Is that something that you're seeing happening in a global scale? Is that a problem for every other country? Or are there some kind of regulations that are put in some places to mitigate those things happening?
Like, I don't see bigger, I would say, policy changes or specifically targeting gig workers, especially in developed countries.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are similar trends in developed countries like US, Canada, UK, Portugal. So people, especially younger people, millennials and Gen Z, drive the gig work involvement. So for now, it's not being affected by that. The government says, okay, so we're gonna reclassify them or go after them specifically because they pay taxes like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But same time, especially younger generations, they value the flexibility, the freedom of work, and create life support kind of income for themselves. But again, it's not about money first. Side hustle, folks, yes. Number one, generate secondary income. Secondary, I emphasize that because they already have income, but they want to have more to go and travel, for example, as I mentioned earlier. With the younger generations, it's more about freedom of expression, freedom of flexibility, being a digital nomad. I work for myself pretty much. I can have students somewhere in Portugal, but I'm living in France, and tomorrow I'm going to go to Singapore and experience that and live there for a month or two. That digital nomad, I would say digital nomadness, there is no such word, right? So, but that's getting more and more popular because especially millennials and Gen Z, they're going after their passion. And it's even more driven by millennials, younger millennials than Gen Z right now. So larger percentage of 1/3 of all full-time workers, I believe, are actually millennials, not Gen Zers. So Gen Zers are highly present, but it's still driven by millennials because, again, once they start into the more coming of age in terms of like getting a family, kids, want to establish themselves, they want to have that flexibility and also pretty much reliability on their own generated income versus relying on the corporate world. So.
And where does technology enters in the equation here? I know that obviously like it's the platforms, they're part of the internet and whatnot, but does it also affect on like a psychological level of I see all my friends having side hustles, so now I also want to have one and I also want to create one? Or is it just because the platforms are there and people just try it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I want to bust one of the myths, actually, before I answer your question. My most recent study, which I completed, custom study in April in US, indicates, and before that I did that in Canada, and numbers are very similar, indicates that 60%, almost 60% of all gig workers not using digital platforms like Uber, Lyft, TaskRabbit, Fiverr, and many others. They actually do it direct. They get their clients directly by either advertising on their own websites or digital channels, Facebook, media. So where they offer their products or services. So Etsy, for example, and only 23% in US saying I use the digital platform to source my clients. Like I'm driving Uber, right, exclusively, or I'm doing Fiverr or TaskRabbit. And about, I don't remember exact number, 14, 17%, something like that, 19%. So they're saying I'm doing 1099, one gig at a time, right, in a sense. An employer as an independent contract worker at a time. So with that said, to your point, where technology plays a role, what we see with generative AI, especially, and in your work and my work, especially, it's being more and more adopted. And corporations, if we're talking about big corporations, they're trying to incorporate generative AI solutions into the workflows. And I think it's going to allow gig workers as well being more efficient in terms of the time, in terms of the cost, right? Because they will be able to apply the technology to actually summarize any conversation we're having right now, for example, or identify, if we're talking about marketing research, identifying a persona if I'm independent consultant, right?
Yeah.
So, or understanding better needs and wants of my clients, whatever service I'm doing. So analyzing images if I'm doing the hairstyle stuff. So again, technology will help all of us to be more efficient. In my opinion, personally, it's not going to replace us as human beings. It doesn't have that human intelligence, human emotional aspect of it. As for kind of Me Too product, like you're saying, actually, no, it's more about personal, psychological, and stage in life kind of condition for any individual, because there are some of us who are inspired by building a corporate career.
Yeah.
And unless I kind of disappointed or there are some other reasons and I'm looking for independence, yes, it might be kind of that switch, and there is maybe some halo effect of that. But majority of us kind of try to focus on what we're passionate about. So that's why I don't see big trend that especially Gen Zers abandoning their career path if they went to college. But there is, to a certain degree, people are saying, yes, my friends are trying this. Maybe I should try.
Yeah.
So, but it's more, from my experience, what I see from my research, it's more about maybe starting a startup company, kind of more of it just doing the gig. People who are looking for a gig, they are looking for that independence. They either burn out from corporate life, or they want that independence, or maybe they need to relocate somewhere and care for their elderly parent or something like that. Then they're looking for other opportunities to have that flexibility. So it's less of an influence by peers, more influenced by your life circumstances and inspirations.
And what about the companies? What can the companies learn from the whole gig economy, the trends? What can they learn from it?
This is a great question. Thank you. So one of the aspects, understanding that it's about the passion, aspiration, as I mentioned, that means connect with them on the emotional level. So that's number one. Number two, understand how gig workers are different from small business owners. And one aspect of them, that their access to credit, as I was talking earlier in my presentation, is not as easily attainable, than established small business. Because once you're in business, you show the cash flow, you can apply for business loan, line of credit. When you do the gig, it's not what we call W-2 in the United States, and probably there's an equivalent in Europe where you work for employer, right? You have a stable salary, like apartment rent, for example. Somewhere I heard the stories in Paris or some other countries where you need to show that you have that employer income. And in their case, they don't have employer income. It's all self-earned kind of situation. And let's say if it's a financial side of things, they need access to that stable credit products where they can actually rely on that, because their income can be very patchy, I would say, right? Very unstable. You sometimes don't know where the next client comes from. So, and have that more even outlined is important. When it comes to products and services on the merchant side, it's more about their preferences and lifestyles, like flexible payments. Understanding that gig workers probably not going to have a very stable income, like what we call US paycheck. Every week, every 2 weeks, every month, you get a paycheck. So if I'm a merchant and you're doing the buy now, pay later, I can rely on that. So have more flexible terms. Number two, have a more personalized loyalty program. Because for younger people, it's a little bit more than only cash back, traditional miles or staying points at a hotel. Sometimes it's about exclusivity. Instead of that, to give an example, Gen Z would say, give me like a flash sale, or give me exclusive tickets to Taylor Swift concert. I would rather take that than those cashback points. So because it's anyway expensive, but it's also like, that's my passion. And the last one is more about personalization. So because again, we're dealing with younger people, it's important to cater to them what is important to them, to mean personal, not mass production. And technology like generative AI will allow us as brands to provide such hyper personalization at scale. So
yeah, especially with synthetic data and everything nowadays, you can just
yeah,
do all those researches.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I think it was very interesting. I think everyone that's listening, it will learn something new, because it's a term that's a bunch of people learn and hear somewhere, gig economy, gig this, and the giggers. But it's sometimes something that you have to excavate a bit to understand what it is. So I think this conversation was really good. I hope everyone listening learned something new with it. And I hope you have fun in the Congress.
Thank you so much. I do. This is awesome. This is the first time for me here. And thank you for having me. I truly enjoying my time here. Thank you.
And that's all for today, folks. Talking Insights is a production of Research World and Esomar, bringing you the stories, voices, and ideas shaping the insights community around the world. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode, share your story, or learn more about sponsoring opportunities, send us an email at podcast@esomar.org. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And join us next week for another great conversation. See you.